Hello, what I've got for you here is a Fleur-de-Lis. It's a very well-known symbol, I suppose, from the Boy Scouts, but actually it goes a long way back, and you might like to look it up in Wikipedia for its history. Really quite ancient. Fleur-de-Lis means the lily flower, and in this case it's very stylized. It has the 3 petals and it has a little band around the bottom. The thing about this carving, why I've chosen it, is because it's a very good beginner's project. There's a lot of things in here, even though it's essentially quite simple. You can also see that it's all cut out. So what we're going to look at is a way of holding cut out carvings like this, which I call paper sandwich. But also the things that we'll be looking at are like 3 aspects of carving that I'm continually trying to bring out. One of which is surfaces, getting them nice and clean. The second thing are lines such as this change of plane from one side to the other, or lines themselves, although we don't actually have any drawn lines on it. And the other thing would be junctions, getting these nice and clean. So it's a good exercise in these 3 qualities. You can make it different sizes. I'll put a download for the drawing and the tools that I'm using here, as usual, in the download below. This is our starting block. This is what we're going to be carving. So how did I get to this state? How did I get to this piece of wood on this piece of wood, and why? Well, this is called a paper sandwich. What we've got is a board, a backing board, on which I've got the cutout of what I'm going to carve, and I've got it glued down with a bit of paper in between. I'll go through that in a minute and show you exactly what I did. The reason for doing this like this is that I can carve down into the background right to the edge without anything breaking off. That's really important. And also, because this is across the grain, this is short, this would be a little bit weak if I was just to clamp it down and try carving it. So it protects weak elements and allows you to work down to the background without breaking. And also, of course, you don't have to clear away all this if it was a relief carving. So that's the reasons for the paper sandwich. So let's look at how it actually works. So the first thing you need, of course, is your drawing. So you would glue your drawing to your board, and I use a simple glue like this. It doesn't really matter. This is a spray-on photo mount. You spray it on, rub the drawing on, and it sticks. Simple as that. It doesn't matter how you get the drawing on there. The drawing goes on the wood. So you have to have smooth wood for this to work. Certainly on the back side. Now here's a piece of wood, for example. This is an offcut of lime wood. I think you can see, I hope you can see all the roughness of this. Well, you could probably get away gluing the drawing down, but you can't really glue this to a flat piece of wood because the glue needs surface to work. So let me just show you about that glue. Okay, so I'll make a little mock-up here. So the first thing we need is a flat board. This is the backing board. This is a bit of MDF. It could be plywood, could be a piece of pine, but it needs to be flat. That's important. Okay. The wood itself that you've got your drawing on, this needs to be flat too. And when you cut it out, and I haven't mentioned, but I've cut this out with a bandsaw. You can use a coping saw if you like, something like that, or any other way. And you don't have to be too accurate, because once this is on here, we can dress this up with a chisel to the edge. So, you know, you've cut your piece of wood out with the drawing. What you need to be careful of is these little bits of fibres here that come from the saw. So you want to just knock those off with a bit of sandpaper or something. Okay, so that's going to go on this board here, like that. That's your cutout piece of wood. What I'm using for paper is not something thin like this, or it used to be newspaper was standard, but I always found that a bit too thin. So I've used something thicker. This is watercolour paper, so it's that little bit thicker, but still got a lot of integrity. this will go on here, and this will go on here, and there's your sandwich. So for the actual glue, I'm using a diluted wood glue. This is 50% water, 50% glue, something like that. You don't need full strength. And what I do is I will brush this on the board, the backing board, all over, and it's got to cover, you know, what's going to be carved. Okay. Then with my paper, what I normally do is I brush glue on this, like so. I'm being a bit sloppy here, but I'll make sure there's plenty of glue, so I flip that over so that's well glued to the backing board, and then I put more glue on here. Okay, then I also put it on the wood, and I'm brushing away from the edge like this. Make sure I go right to the edge, make sure any of those fibres, if they're there, are don't fold in, because what I want is a nice neat contact like that. So now you could probably leave it like that, and it would glue nicely, but I always clamp it. So when I clamp, and I make sure that, for example, with this one here, I've clamped, I make sure everything is clamped, not just one in the middle. I make sure the all edge is clamped, because what I want to see is squeeze out here. I want to see that the glue has gone right to the edge around my carving. So it doesn't need a high pressure, just some sort of pressure like that. Then we leave that to dry, and that's important. You don't want to take it off too soon, so you do need to leave this at least overnight. So it looks like this. So this is well glued on. And what we'll be doing is, when we finish carving, is we'll be splitting this paper here, and this will pop off, believe it or not. Very exciting stage. Anyway, that's the paper glue method, the paper sandwich method. So we need to get our carving glued down like this on a board that we can clamp. So this is either going to be clamped with your G clamps, C clamps onto the bench, or some other way of holding. So we hold this board and we carve this part.